Thank you for joining us today. I am Kirsty Julia with Belmont Village Senior Living. I'm really excited about our presentation today, and I look forward to hearing from our speaker, Phil Pylant. Immediately afterwards, you'll be learning more about Belmont Village with our family advisor, Susan Berger. We do hope you will stay on for this. For those of you who have questions, please use the Q&A feature for questions that will be answered at the end of the presentation. Let me now introduce our speaker, Phil Pylant.
Hello.
Give me 1 second, Phil, and I'll go ahead and read your bio. Give me 1 second. Phil Pylant graduated from University of Houston College of Pharmacy in 1971 and opened his first pharmacy in 1972. He founded Village Compounding Pharmacy in 1979 and has been the PIC CEO for more than 42 years. Phil brings almost 50 years of ownership and pharmacy experience, including 40 years of compounding experience. Phil has been highlighted in publications, including newspapers and journals, as well as appearances on television for news outlets and alternative medicine series. He has also been a keynote speaker at various conferences around the country. Due to his expertise in compounding and biochemistry, Phil has developed patent delivery systems now used by physicians. Additionally, in 2004, he was appointed to the Scientific Council of the International and American Association of Clinical Nutrition. Phil has always been on the forefront of ever-evolving compounding industry, and in January of 2007, he established Village Compounding Pharmacy as the first PCAB accredited pharmacy in the state of Texas. Due to his careful attention to quality assurance, safety, and customer service over the years, Village has been distinguished as one of the top 2 compounding pharmacies in the United States for both 2014 and 2015 by IBS World, an international market and industry research firm. Phil, we are happy to have you today. Thank you. And at that time, this time I will go ahead and let you share your screen.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Can y'all see that? Can y'all see that?
Is that up?
It's up. Yes, it looks great.
Okay, good.
That's half the battle.
Thank everybody for attending. I hope that what I present to you will be of use to you now and in the future, because it's very hard to find what I would consider the true science behind the hormones for men and women. And I'm going to try to present what I consider a true scientific presentation for you. Of course, everybody's got to do a disclaimer. So this presentation intended for educational purposes only. I can't really see it because but anyway, it's up, you can see it. And it's a disclaimer that everybody has to do nowadays. I hate it, but that's the way it is. And so I will move on. Okay. So the objectives today are to understand what compounding actually is, to understand the basics of bioidentical hormones, to understand the difference between bioidentical and synthetic hormones, and to understand the benefits of bioidentical hormones. Discuss the Women's Health Initiative study if time permits, because that's very definitive in what's been happening for the last 20 years. And so I think that you would enjoy understanding from both sides of the coin here. So first things first, what is compounding? It is the intersection of the art and science of making medications to meet individual needs. And what does that mean? That means, let's say your doctor writes a specific prescription that requires just small tweaking of maybe a hormone, maybe any type of medication that needs something quite different than what you can get commercially. We're able to do that. You know, we have the ability to take out the preservatives, the dyes in capsules or tablets, and make the pure stuff, so that if you have allergies to these things, we can do that. And we've been doing this for 40 something years now. And it's really rewarding to be able to make something for somebody that they didn't think they would ever be able to get. And you know, we have a lot of people that are pretty good following because of this. So I really think compounding has a place in the medical field, and I hope that we can stay here. So so here's what we're really good at. Pharmacists are highly educated to do what we do. The compounding pharmacists are. We do a tremendous amount of extra training than what it requires us just to be a pharmacist. And in our pharmacies, we use advanced technology to ensure that we dispense it as perfect as humanly possible. We also, when we make one of these compounds, periodically we send a batch to be tested at an offsite testing lab to be sure that what we're making it within the specifications of the FDA, which is 10% one direction or 10% the other as far as the strength. But my requirements are quite different. I require we are no more than 3% off either direction compared to the 10%. And we are able to do that by our protocols that we have. Our protocols are very interesting in the fact that we make a sheet for the compound. We have all the weights and the lot numbers of that particular powder, and we are able to then back it up each time. Let's say you come back the next time, it's going to be exactly the same. A lot of people don't realize, you know, how absolutely perfect we can make these things. A man was just in yesterday, and he was asking, well, you know, this, that, and the other, and he said, well, how can I be sure that this is going to be what the doctor ordered, going to be the same? And so I actually brought him back into the pharmacy and walked him through our procedures, and he went, oh my gosh, okay, now thank you very much, I'll be back. But bottom line is, this stuff that we do is every bit as good as a manufacturer. It is repeatable every time. So I just wanted you to know what compounding is all about, and you know how perfect we try to make these things. So in this particular slide, the reason I have this is because this was not said by anybody in alternative medicine of any. He's one of the top guys in the world in conventional hormone therapy, and his name is Leon Spiroff. And what he said here is so important because this reflects exactly what we talk about every day. The ultimate biological response reflects the balance of the actions of the different hormones with their respective receptors. Coming from Leon Spiroff, that truly means a lot. And as we move along, you'll understand why I think this statement is so important to what we do. And coming from Leon Spiroff, I mean, it's kind of like E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. Well, when Leon Spiroff talks, everybody listens. And so what he's saying here is so important to what we do here. So I wanted you to know that this is a conventional doctor saying this. So what is a hormone? A hormone, in the simplest terms, they're chemical messengers that travel through the blood, enter tissues, and regulate cell function. They do this by interacting with specific receptors. And receptors are one of the big things in hormone replacement. We talk about receptors all the time because that's what gets the hormone to the nucleus of the cell so that the protein is made and then the response comes out. So here's how a receptor works. It's kind of like a lock and a key. The receptor is the lock and the hormone is the key. So if the key, which I say bioidentical hormone, is perfect match to the lock, you get the expected outcome. But if the key, a synthetic hormone, is not perfect, is not a perfect match, you don't always get the expected outcome. And what that means is, I mean, it could get in there and the door slam immediately on this thing. I mean, in other words, it's just not perfect. And so to be perfect, the key has to match the lock perfectly. We see a lot of these receptors where the hormones or the xenoestrogens, like the foreign estrogens coming in from the environment and stuff, can unlock the receptor, but the outcome of that unlocking is so different than what would happen if it was the perfect key for that lock. So that's how hormones work. They have receptors that accept them, and then they give a response. And that's what we're looking for, is the exact key for that receptor. So what are synthetic hormones? They're pharmacologic agents that mimic some of the actions of our body's own hormones, but not all, and at not all levels, which is so important. So they have a different molecular structure. And we learned in pharmacology that there is something called the structure-activity relationship. So if the structure is slightly different, you get a slightly different outcome. So that's where we have our problem with what we're talking about here, is we want the exact hormone that mimics the hormones in the body. And that exact hormone has to have the exact molecular structure of what our body's hormones are. So we don't call it hormone replacement therapy. We call it substitution therapy, because you're just substituting a drug, basically, because it's not a hormone, it's a drug, for what should be a bioidentical hormone or a replacement. We're replacing with the bioidenticals and substituting with the synthetics. So what are bioidentical hormones? The same hormone produced by the human body, exactly the same exact molecular structure as made in the human body, produce the same physiologic response as our own hormones, endogenous hormones, and we administer it in a way that imitates the body's natural ratios and mechanisms, which is very important. We want to make sure that, I think, that when you give a hormone, that it should duplicate how the ovaries send these hormones out into the blood. And hormones never send the ovaries never send a hormone into the stomach and the liver. The hormone always sends it in. The ovaries always send it into the blood, and it goes straight to the organs and their receptor sites, and nothing interferes with them. But if you don't give it that way, let's say you give it orally, it goes through the stomach and the liver, and a lot of it is broken down, and you get a small amount of it coming out. And there's some side effects to all that. So as far as I'm concerned, I think oral estrogens and stuff should be done transdermally versus orally, or you can do them through vaginal suppositories, or you can do it through lozenges that you hold in your mouth. But to me, the transdermal cream is the gold standard of getting hormones in that duplicate exactly how the body delivered them originally. So let's look at molecular structures here. This is the science I'm talking about. These top three estrogens are bioidentical or human estrogens, and it's a two-dimensional schematic. Actually, they're three-dimensional, and they have, there's a three-dimension to them. But in the books, you can't do three dimensions. So this is what we look at when we look at this in a book of some type. And then the bottom three are synthetics. One is equilin, which is a hormone from a different species. Equilin. See, equilin comes from the horse, and for many years, the Premarin, which was the gold standard for estrogen for many years, people didn't realize really they were getting some hormones coming from a different species. I'm not too sure that I would want to take something from a different species, but it seemed that Premarin was a pretty big seller, and it went on a long time. The one on the left, Ethenol Estradiol, is the estrogen that they put mostly in birth control pills. It's probably at least 100 times stronger than our own estrogen. So it's given in very small milligram basis. The interesting thing about ethenol estradiol, which I find very interesting, is that there were two researchers in England who were looking at trout in these streams to find out, what they could find out about what toxins were in them and such. And so they looked at these industrial sites and they looked at the trout, and the trout actually, when they pulled them out and tested them, they had this vitellogenin, which is a product of estrogen. And so they said, where in the world is that coming from? It's not coming from the industrial waste, because they don't make that type of stuff in these industries around here. So one of them speculated, well, it could be coming from the urine of women taking birth control pills. And so what they did was they took these trout and took them to the lab and administered ethenol estradiol, which is that molecule. And it turns out in nanogram, which is very, very small, they were elicit a response of vitellogenin. And so what this really means is, to them, they said this has very immense repercussions, because what's happening is the waterways in Europe and North America are being dumped full of these estrogens from the urine of women taking birth control pills. So that's a very immense finding in my eyes, that the water contains estrogen. And so there's a lot of information that I won't even go into about what they're finding about these estrogens in the waterways. But anyway, they found that, and it's a fairly interesting find. The bottom one was diethylstilbestrol. It was used in the late 40s throughout the 50s, and they used it for women that were pregnant to prevent miscarriage and such. And what they found out was the children of these women were beginning to show a lot of cervical cancer for women, for the girls, and testicular cancer for the boys. And they also found infertility, birth defects, and all types of reproductive problems. And so they pulled this off the market, but they had this on the market for at least 15 years for women to take it. And the end result is their kids are paying a dear price for making this mistake, this synthetic estrogen mistake on these women who were pregnant. It's a dear price to pay. So but anyway, as you can see, one of the things I want you to see is that the equilin and the estrone are almost exactly the same. But one is for a horse of 1,000 pounds, and one's for a lady that's 110 pounds. So it's these little changes are very important to note. And then the ethenol estradiol, there's more involved in that. I won't go into it, but anyway, I want you to understand these molecular structures. So the next one you'll understand even more. Here's a little guy that's asking, let me see here now, which of these little molecules did my trainer recommend for me? They seem so different, it probably does not matter. And the difference in this is like a hydrogen difference between the two. So we drop down to the next slide and find out how much difference it does make. The one on the left is testosterone, and the one on the right is estrone, an estrogen. The one on the left makes a man, and the one on the right makes a woman, with a very, very small change in molecular structure. And I mean very small, one of the smallest changes you can make in a molecular structure. And yet one makes a man and one makes a woman. So as you can see, it's very important to understand the science behind these molecules. So the next structure, one is natural progesterone and one is Provera medroxyprogesterone acetate. And the structure here does seem quite different, because you see there's quite a few groups on here that do some things that make the Provera more orally active and maybe stronger. But it happens to be that the Provera was the culprit in the Women's Health Initiative study that that possibly was causing the problems with cancer and such when it was given along with the Premarin. So it was the Prempro, Provera that caused the problems. And I think that if you dig that out, you'll find exactly what I'm talking about. They had to stop the Women's Health Initiative study early because so many women were starting to show up with breast cancer, and that had to do with Provera, not the estrogen. So, but there's your progesterone, and so you can see that, well, it's not exactly a really close molecule to the progesterone, but they use it because it does, it does shed the lining of the uterus just like progesterone, but there's a lot of other side effects with this. So that Equilin I was talking about, this is just something silly, but anyway, it's the major metabolite of the Equilin I showed you earlier is 4-hydroxyequilinin. It was auto-oxidizes to an O-quinone, which isomerizes to a potent cytotoxin 4-hydroxyequilin-O-quinone, which, if you can see the picture here, the lady's really happy for a while, but in the end, she may end up with breast cancer because of this. And I'm not saying Equilin would cause breast cancer in all people, but it has a high tendency in that direction because it is a foreign estrogen to the human body. Okay, so proceeding with the therapy with first principles is what you should try to understand. So what I don't understand is why they're not using bioidentical molecules for the hormones. So here's how this works out. Type 1 diabetes, they use human insulin now. They used to use insulin, pork insulin and beef insulin, bovine insulin, until they could figure out how to make the molecule to match the human molecule. And they finally did that. And now type 1 diabetes is way more controllable with the human insulin molecule than it was using an insulin from a different species. In the small stature growth hormone, they used to get that from the pituitary of different species, and they were able to use recombinant DNA technology and create the human growth hormone molecule, which matches our own molecule. So it works great. Addison's disease, human cortisol, and that's a molecule that matches our cortisol. Hypothyroidism, human thyroid molecule. So why are we not using these human molecules in sex hormone deficiency? We should be using them, but we're not. So HRT, as I said, replacement therapy is replacing what is missing, like insulin, thyroid, growth hormone, cortisol. That's replacing exactly what the body no longer produces and producing it deficiently. So we're trying to recreate the natural scenario that makes sense. Why? Nothing works as well as human molecules for humans. So HST, hormone substitution therapy, that's equine estrogen, that's like the Premarin. Hydroxyprogesterone acetate, that's Provera. Then you have the Prempro, all other synthetic molecules. Then you have a lot of these at the bottom that people want to say, like, I think it was either Senestin or Evesta. They say, oh, this is a natural hormone. Why did they call it natural? And they were fooling the public because they got it from a plant. But guess what? It wasn't natural because the molecule itself was not a natural molecule, but they were marketing it as natural because it came from a plant. But when they actually extracted it and made the molecule, it did not match the human molecule. So it might have been a natural source, but it was not natural to the human body. So here are some of the unwanted side effects of the progestin estrogen therapy of a conventional: breast tenderness, gallstones, blood clots, nausea and vomiting, leg cramps, impaired glucose tolerance, worsened uterine fibrosis, high blood pressure, vaginal bleeding, fluid retention, headaches, endometriosis, and jaundices, and increased risk of endometrial and breast cancer. This is conventional therapy. So the human estrogen we use the doctors mostly write for nowadays is like 20% of the, well, estriol is 80% because that's the safer hormone. And then they put mostly estradiol in at 20%. And that's what we're talking about here, is that we're trying to match up what the body does. And so these are the prescriptions that are written in that way. Estrone we rarely use, and there's good reasons for that. But Premarin is the the one from the horse, and it's got, as you can see, the percentages: estradiol 5 to 19%, estrone 75 to 80%, and then the horse hormone equilin 6 to 15%. So, as I was saying, when the prescriptions are written, it's mostly estriol and estradiol at 80% estriol, 20% estradiol, which has turned out to be kind of the sweet spot when it comes to replacement therapy and getting it right, the safest way and in the best outcome. So Triest used to be used more, but we really don't want to use estrone much anymore. It's the biased that we see the most of, and it's written in an 80-20%. And that's what you want. Okay, so menopausal symptoms of estrogen deficiency: hot flashes, hair loss, dry skin, sleep disruption, night sweats, anxiety, vaginal dryness, vaginal atrophy, irritability, memory loss, depression, nervousness, diminished sex drive, painful intercourse, urinary incontinence, and heart palpitations. And if you ever speak to somebody that has gone through that, they'll say, yep, you got all that right, because that's exactly what goes on in menopausal symptoms of estrogen deficiency. So, but here's something really interesting, that the functions of estrogen, you have to understand there are over 400 functions of estrogen in the body. 400. I went through and just marked down a few of the ones that I thought were sort of important. And I'm not even going to read all these, it's too much. But I will start with this one and say, estrogen stimulates the production of choline acetyl transferase, an enzyme which helps prevent Alzheimer's disease. And I think everybody wants to know that if they take estrogen, it stimulates the production of this choline acetyl transferase to help prevent Alzheimer's. It's all of these. I guess not everybody can see the screen, so I guess I'll read some of these. Increases metabolic rate. Yes, what it does is it helps create insulin receptors and brings the glucose into these receptors to increase metabolic rate, such as what they're finding is that the estrogen will actually deliver glucose to the brain. And when the estrogen begins to wane a little bit in menopause, not as much glucose is going to the brain, so there's not the energy that the brain needs is from the glucose. And so there's a lot of speculation there that, well, if the brain energy drops during menopause, is that one of the causes of Alzheimer's? Well, I'll go into that a little later. But yeah, it could be, because as the metabolic rate goes down, the activity of the brain goes down, and you actually can't get things out of the brain as easily as you should be able to when they were before the menopause. So the metabolic rate is very important to the brain. Improves insulin sensitivity, regulates body temperature, hot flashes, helps prevent muscle damage, helps maintain muscle, improves sleep, reduces risk of cataracts, helps maintain elasticity of the arteries, and dilates small arteries. And continuing on, increases blood flow, inhibits platelet stickiness, decreases accumulation of plaque on arteries, enhances magnesium uptake. Very important. Magnesium is one of the most important of our minerals. Maintains the amount of collagen in the skin, decreases blood pressure, decreases LDL, prevents its oxidation, helps maintain memory, increases reasoning and new ideas, helps fine motor skills, enhances production of nerve growth factor. One more slide here on this. Increases water content of the skin, responsible for its thickness and softness. increases HDL by 10 to 15%, reduces overall risk of heart disease by 40 to 50%, maintains bone density, increases sexual interest, decreases wrinkles, improves mood, enhances energy, aids in the formation of neurotransmitters in the brain, such as serotonin, which decreases depression, anxiety, and irritability. And this bone density thing I would like to touch on because I may talk about it again. But what happens when the estrogen begins to wane is that the osteoclast, which is the cell that takes the old bone away and makes a little hole for the osteoblast to create new bone, the osteoclast gets more active because the estrogen was able to maintain a balance in this osteoclast activity. But as estrogen goes down, the osteoclast gets more active and reduces the bone density even further. And so by using estrogen, you can reestablish the balance of the osteoclast, osteoblast, because the bones completely turn over. The long bones every 10 to 12 years, and the shorter bones every 2 or 3 years, completely turn over, new bone. So we have to have this ongoing to keep the bones healthy. Okay, then here's sources for it, what I just said. I'm just giving you some sources so that you know what I'm saying came from somewhere. So replacement therapy, maintenance of skin health, skin water content, collagen, and skin thickness, which we just talked about. It's important that I tell you this, though, because estrogen is the main hormone to increase collagen regeneration in the skin. And so when estrogen goes away, the skin begins to age, you get more wrinkles, and the skin is just, older skin. And if you are to maintain the skin health, it would be a good idea to be on a balanced hormone replacement therapy regimen. Isn't just estrogen. You got to be on, it's got to be balanced. As I told you in the very beginning, what Spiroff said is you don't just give one hormone. You have to give it in a balanced form so that when it's balanced, you get all the complete outcomes the way that you're looking for. So here's the study for that particular one. So menopause, it's the genital urinary syndrome of menopause, which is the new name for having vaginal dryness and thinness of the vaginal walls and such. That's the new name. So in menopause, the estrogen prevents the urogenital and vaginal atrophy, increases vascularity, thickens the blood vessel walls, thickens the vaginal epithelium, decreases vaginal discharge, increases elasticity, less frequent urinary tract infections, prevents atopic vaginitis, which is more or less what it used to be called. Now it's called, the genital urinary syndrome of menopause. So with bioidentical estrogen replacement, combination of bioidentical estrogen therapy containing estriol alone may be, oh goodness, I can't see that. So maybe one. Okay. Estriol considered a breast-safe estrogen. Parts of the world, estriol triads have been used for over 50 years. Metabolism of estrogen does not result in a large increase in potential carcinogens. It is an endpoint estrogen. Animal studies have shown estriol to be preventative against carcinogen-induced mammary tumors. Well, I'm not saying this because I can't say it, but in Europe, they call it the breast-safe hormone. Because what happens, that I can say, is that all the estrogens use the same receptor sites. The difference between estriol is that estriol is in that receptor site a shorter amount of time than estradiol or estrone, but it does get in that receptor site. And what it does, it blocks the estradiol from being too overstimulatory. So it's almost like it's anti-estrogen in a sense, because the estradiol is unable to overstimulate the cells because estriol happens to be in those receptor sites. So you get, a buffering effect when estriol is in your hormone replacement therapy. And we know that. I mean, it's just there. I mean, we've talked to people in Europe about it, and they've been talking about it for 50 years. It's should be in our replacement therapy. So the sources of all this, here they are. I've got sources there on the estriol and how important it is. So what is estrogen dominance? Well, estrogen dominance occurs between the ages of 45 and about 52 in women, more or less, because as the progesterone begins to go down because of anovulatory periods, meaning you didn't ovulate during that period, what happens is you don't make enough progesterone that you used to make. And so what's very important about what I'm telling you here is that if I were a lady in my 40s, I would have my progesterone checked, and I think I would do it by saliva testing, because as the progesterone goes down, the protection effect of the progesterone also goes down. And what happens in many cases when the progesterone goes down, the lining of the uterus begins to build up. And what happens is the person may not have a period every month. And when they do have a period, they have darker blood and thicker lining coming out. And so you're really not getting a complete clearing of the endometrial lining during those pre-menopause years. It's called peri-menopause because progesterone has always been there to balance the estrogen. But as we stop ovulating, we stop producing a whole lot of our progesterone. So we become imbalanced with estrogen, and that's estrogen dominance. So the symptoms of estrogen dominance are fatigue, breast tenderness, fluid retention, heavy irregular menstruation, fibrocystic breast, uterine fibroids, headaches, craving sweets, decreased libido, weight gain, mood swings, and loss of scalp hair. This is estrogen dominance, and it occurs in a whole big percent of women in perimenopause, strictly because the progesterone is no longer in enough quantity to balance what it's been doing. And therefore, you get this dominance effect, which is very real. I mean, it's very real. So what I want to say here is that we go into menopause, we lose maybe 50% of our estrogen, but we lose close to 90% of our progesterone. So that's why I'm saying maybe menopause should be viewed through the progesterone lens and not the estrogen lens. Focus on the balance between the two. Has receptors in almost every cell of the body, progesterone does. Secreted by the corpus luteum on the ovary, acts on the uterus, breast, brain, smooth muscle, kidneys, bones, pancreas, and cellular membranes. And it's metabolized to other active hormones, which brings me to one more thing I'd like to say. When you use a synthetic progestin, it does not metabolize to make the other hormones. In fact, it probably gets in the way and messes up our hormone milieu that we look for to keep the body in balance. So these synthetic progestins can actually block the progesterone from doing what it needs to do. So what I'm going to talk about is a progesterone analog. What's an analog? Well, progesterone is the main hormone in the group. Everything within that group are called analogs. So like Provera is an analog. Norethindrone acetate is an analog. So progesterone is the main one. Analogs are things in that group. So here's what I like to say about progesterone and synthetic progestins. Progesterone analogs, not progesterone, exhibit what we call dissociative glucocorticoid activity, which means they act like cortisol with respect to the immune system. And what does that mean? That means that let's say you're going along for years and you have breast cancer cells that are being taken care of by the immune system in the area of the breast. And because of this, you don't get breast cancer. Now, let's say you give a synthetic progestin that acts like cortisol with respect to the immune system, because cortisol downregulates your immune system. That's what it does. That's what it's for. And that's why you take prednisone when you have reactions and stuff. Your immune system is reacting, so you're trying to suppress it. Well, you don't want to suppress your immune system around the breast, because I mean, this could cause the breast cancer. So this is a journal that talks about the dissociative glucocorticoid activity of medroxyprogesterone acetate in normal human lymphocytes. That journal article you can pick up and read about it, because it's important to know what happened in the Women's Health Initiative study, in my opinion. So due to the dissociative glucocorticoid activity, they can produce local immunosuppressive effect, which allow a tumor to break out. They do this, they establish a milieu? Yes. In favoring estrogen production? Yes, they do. So the benefits of bioidentical progesterone, not limited to prevention of endometrial cancer, which so many doctors say if you don't have a uterus, you don't need progesterone. That's nonsense. What I asked a woman one time, or what I asked many women, you still have a brain, don't you? Yeah. Okay. Still have bones? Uh-huh. Yeah. Breasts? Yeah. So basically, progesterone has receptors in almost every part of the body. So why would you not go ahead and keep it going like it's always been? Because progesterone isn't just there to shed the lining of the uterus. My goodness. Progesterone has actions and effects throughout the entire body. Synthetic progestins can actually block the action of your intrinsic natural progesterone, which is very, very interesting, because if you're taking synthetic progestins, your natural progesterone within the body may not be able to work, and you need it to work. Natural progesterone has much fewer side effects than synthetic progestins. Here's the studies on the bones for one thing. Progesterone, controversial about it, but I still believe that progesterone has a bone trophic action, meaning that it stimulates the osteoblast. Remember, I talked about the osteoclast taking bone away so that the osteoblast could bring in new bone. Well, some people say yes and some say no, that it doesn't do it. But I think there is some valid. It's very valid in my thinking that progesterone has a bone trophic effect, and there are studies based on that where the progesterone will actually help increase bone density. Estrogen will not increase bone density, but it will slow down the loss of bone. So you put the two together and you get some pretty good outcomes in osteoporosis. So bioidentical progesterone is a natural antidepressant, helps normalize the thyroid. Yes. Uses fat for energy. Absolutely. Restores libido. Has a positive effect on cholesterol. Acts as a natural diuretic and antihypertensive. Decreases cramping. Decreases uterine fibroids. Yes. Protects against fibrocystic breasts. Absolutely. We have had doctors prescribe progesterone for women with fibrocystic breast, and they actually apply it to the breast, and these fibrocysts go away on the breast. Normalizes blood clotting. Protects against cancer. Protects bone loss and promotes strong bone growth. Balances the effects of estrogen at the tissue level. Is anti-estrogen at the cellular level. So estrogen plus progesterone is beneficial to use in combination to obtain hormone balance. One without the other can lead to dominance of one or the other. They have reciprocal actions, and what I mean by that is progesterone stimulates or makes the estrogen receptors more receptive to estrogen, and estrogen makes the progesterone receptors more receptive to progesterone. That's what we call reciprocal action. They balance each other in physiologic effects. All right, let's do some testosterone in women. Women produce about 0.3 milligrams of testosterone daily premenopausal. Women rely on adrenal androgens and androstenedione and DHEA for up to 50% of their total supply of testosterone. Testosterone decreases with age. Testosterone production by the ovaries varies with the menstrual cycle, peaking at ovulation due to LH surge. Benefits of progesterone or testosterone: maintains normal libido and probably probably helps with libido, actually, increases libido. Increases bone mineral density, preventing further decline in osteoporosis. It helps because testosterone helps retain your calcium. Maintains lean body mass. Yes, makes you kind of firmer. It firms up the body. Increases muscle tone and strength. Improves memory and structural integrity of the brain. Increases sense of well-being, mood, and self-esteem. Increases the levator ani support and control of the sphincters, meaning that the pelvic floor is supported more, and this what we call the cough drip. This changes that in women who have a little dripping going on when they cough and do things. The testosterone applied with estradiol in a vaginal cream actually reverses all of that. So many women have just gone like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe the change that's happened in this." And testosterone and estradiol both will do that and prevent that drip that women have at some point. Provides cardiovascular protection, has been successfully used to treat PMS, increases insulin sensitivity, makes skin and hair health, maintains skin and hair health, and improve quality of life. And we have sources for all of this. Women's Health Initiative study. I don't even know if I need to go into that because I have something else more interesting. But anyway, you can actually read about Women's Health Initiative study and find out what happened there, and it might do you good to understand that. But I don't want to spend any time here on this. I want to talk about what I found out about Alzheimer's over the last couple of years following the research. 2 out of 3 of Alzheimer's patients are women. Why are women vulnerable? Lisa Mosconi, PhD at Weill Cornell Women's Brain Initiative, sought to answer that question. Why 2 out of 3 Alzheimer patients are women? What do all women have in common? Decline in fertility and menopause at middle age. This means that hormones like estradiol, progesterone, testosterone begin to decline. Using a PET scan, they were able to measure the principal fuel source for cellular activity, which was glucose. Women who had undergone menopause or were perimenopausal had lower levels of glucose metabolism. Scientists have seen this pattern of hypometabolism in brains of patients in the earliest stages of Alzheimer's. Glucose-estrogen connection. Estrogen and testosterone push neurons to burn glucose to make energy. This keeps your brain younger and healthier. The hypothalamus, the brainstem, the hippocampus are all connected with estrogen. The estrogen hypothesis: PET scans and MRI to measure 4 biomarkers for Alzheimer's. Women had 30% more amyloid beta, 22% lower glucose metabolism, 11% less gray and white matter volume. Turns out that menopause status is the most consistent predictor. Menopausal status may be the best predictor of Alzheimer's related to brain changes. Seen in brain imaging features are biomarkers in the brain. Conclusion: estrogen decline is not the sole trigger of Alzheimer's, but is a valuable indicator of early Alzheimer's. Okay, here's something else real quick. Dr. Dale Bredesen, who wrote the book that I'm going to talk to you about in a few minutes, The End of Alzheimer's. I'm going to give you some of his stuff. Alzheimer's is only one of the nation's top 10 common causes of death for which there is no effective treatment. No effective treatment, period. It is worse than fatal because it robs victims of their very humanity and terrorizes families. It seems there are no rules to this game. It is as if nature handed us a rule book written in disappearing ink and edited it with evil gremlins to rewrite the entire section when our back was turned. An example is amyloid beta sticky plaques that destroy synapses cause Alzheimer's. Wrong. We thought that the beta amyloid was the cause of Alzheimer's. It is not. It is something a little different than what you think it is. Amyloid hypothesis. When drug companies tested compounds that are based on the amyloid hypothesis, the results have been ranged from frustrating to bewildering. The compounds actually removed the plaque, but the patients either got no better or incredibly got worse. So what they found was even when they got rid of the plaque, the amyloid, that the Alzheimer's just continued on down the road. There was no slowing it down. This statement from Dr. Breed, let me say this as clearly as I can. Alzheimer's disease can be prevented, and in many cases, associated cognitive decline can be reversed. This comes from 3 decades of work in his lab. Yes and no. I'll tell you something about it in a second. But I want you to know that if you have not tested for ApoE4 allele, you probably should, because that is the allele. That's the one that is if you have this, you have a high susceptibility to Alzheimer's, and there's a good reason for that. The allele ApoE has no way to detox. So you have the ApoE 2, 3, and 4. The 4 has 2 of the amino acids that do not detox. The 2s and 3s have the cysteine, and it has the sulfhydryl group on the cysteine, which will detox the brain of toxins and mercury, heavy metals, and such as that. The ApoE4 has no way to detox the brain. So if you are an ApoE4 person, you should know that, because there are things you can do right now to back this stuff out. I know that there are, because when I got my clinical nutrition degree and also my DANLA degree, we went through all the detoxing protocols, and you can detox some of this stuff out of the brain. So the 3 metabolic threats are inflammation, decline in the shortage of supportive nutrients, hormones, and brain supporting molecules, toxic substances such as metals or biotoxins. Alzheimer's is what happens when the brain tries to protect itself from the above. So really, Alzheimer's is actually what the brain is doing in Alzheimer's is trying to protect the neurons. And this is what is so fascinating, in the fact that you think that the beta amyloid and such as that, these plaques are the absolute cause of Alzheimer's, but they are not. What they are actually trying to do is protect the neurons by putting up this shellacking, this plaque, in which these toxins can't stimulate, can't break down. And so Alzheimer's actually is a misnomer in the fact that it's really trying to protect us rather than hurt us. And I know that's going to sound really funny to some of you, but if you dig as deep as I have, you'll begin to understand exactly what I just said. So here's some information that you can where you can get some of this. You can get the X-Brain by Lisa Mosconi and study that. She's got a lot of stuff on nutrition for the brain, estrogen for the brain, and what she has found. This next one is a book by Dr. Bredesen, The End of Alzheimer's. Very, very good book. And then there's something very recent that just showed up, and it's called L-serine. That is an amino acid that actually can help with Alzheimer's. And this is something you can look up and study about if you have this problem, or if somebody you know, you can look this up, because L-serine is something new on the playing field of Alzheimer's, and it'd be interesting to find out about it. The last thing is this pharmaceutical Repatha. This isn't really to be used in Alzheimer's, but I will tell you, the Repatha, there's some evidence that it clears the arteries and improves circulation to the brain. I have a doctor friend who's a Harvard graduate type guy, really smart, and he does alternative and medicine and such, and we're good friends. We talk all the time. He told me about this, and so some more information, but some people have seen improved cognition from plaque clearing in the carotid arteries. What you do is you can go to, I think maybe Methodist has the CIMT scan, and it scans for that the plaque. And if you can clear the plaque in the coronary arteries, then you can get better circulation, and your cognitive function can actually improve. That's it. Okay.
Wow, that was so much information. And I think everyone on the call today could stay on with and then listen to you for another hour. Your knowledge and your passion is just, it's unbelievable. So thank you. I do want to, and we had a few questions come through. So
Okay.
this, I'm gonna, let me see this one right here. One person wrote in, you have a recommendation on the best approach to managing anxiety in menopausal years. I've recently started experiencing daily anxiety and dread. I have been in menopause for 6.5 years and have not had any other major issues except for hot flashes. I've been reading about magnesium as a supplement to help. I've also read that Prozac could help manage the anxiety. Any suggestions?
I assume she's not hasn't checked into bioidentical replacement therapy, because if she is on it, if she's not on it, that's my recommendation, is to find a doctor that'll do that for her, and let the doctor check her over. And I would say that maybe the worst thing that a woman can do is wait too long to get on this, because as I will tell you is that women who begin to work on these hormones in the early 50s, I'm going to tell you something. Their aging basically goes into slow motion. Their peers who don't do it age much quicker than they do. And my wife, for instance, has been on this. She's 72. I'm 73. She's been on it since her early 50s. And this gal is something else. She has had no symptoms at all of any menopause. Her cognitive function is she's way smarter than me, by the way. And she's just something else. And so I could use my wife as an example of what happens if you get on it at the right time. But even ladies that I talk to that are starting to worry about it in the early 60s, and so they can still get on the right track, even in your early 60s. The main thing that you need to understand is you need to understand two things. First of all, you understand that a doctor may and may not be what I call a minimalist. A minimalist is somebody that gives just the right amount, kind of like the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Too much, too little, right in the middle. You want the push that button that's perfect for that woman, but you don't want to overdo it. So you give just the right amount to let it work, and the body knows how to heal itself, and that's what I talk about all the time. The body, infinite intelligence, will take care of the rest if you just get out of the way.
Okay, thank you. Another one came in. If I take a BIEST creams, can I reverse or improve symptoms over time?
Yeah, but bias cream is, along with progesterone, yes, it's the balance of the two. Yes, the symptom, you won't believe what happens. I had a lady that's 59 years old that came to me about 4 or 5 months ago, and she told me all the stuff, and I talked to, then I got my doctor friend, and I said, here's her situation, let her call you and talk to you and all. So she set all that up, and I said, here's what I think she should be on, and he said, I agree. Put her on that. 2 weeks later, she was bouncing off the walls. I mean, she was she couldn't believe what it did for her. I made sure that she got a vaginal cream with estriol in it that had adhering qualities to the cream, so it adhered to the vaginal wall. So her dryness and her painful intercourse stopped immediately. I mean, it can be done quickly.
Wow. Okay, for time, there's one more. Let's see. If one uses estrogen, are you required to take progesterone? And if so, how much?
If you're on estrogen, are you required to take progesterone?
Yes, I'm
Is that
sorry.
what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Required, no, but recommended, absolutely. I would never want any woman on estrogen unless she was taking bioidentical progesterone, ever. You've got to balance the two. It's all about balance. As Leon Spiroff said, it's all about balance. You balance it, and there are ways that we know how to balance. You go 200 molecules of progesterone to 1 molecule of estrogen. That's a good balance point to look for when you're doing saliva testing. That's your balance point. So
Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay. And Phil, I'm going to have you stop sharing your screen at this time.
Okay.
A lot of good questions are still coming through. Unfortunately, you guys, we are kind of at our time. It's 2 o'clock, so we don't want to keep you any longer than we need to, Phil. We sure appreciate your time today, your knowledge, and we know how busy you are, and we thank you really for your time, and just thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate you letting me share this, because I know a lot of women need this. They
Absolutely,
need it.
absolutely. And for those of you who are still on the call, we do have Phil's information, and we'd be happy to share that with you. If you wanted to send us an email, I'd be happy to share that with you. And thank you again, Phil. And at this time, I want to introduce Susan Berger, our Belmont Village Senior Advisor, and as she's going to share a little bit about Belmont Village with you all.
Thank you, Kirsty. Successful aging has a great deal to do with brain and cardiovascular health. And at Belmont Village, we recognize that lifestyle has a profound impact on both. What you eat and drink, how much you exercise, and the way you socialize are all equally important. And our goal every day for all of our residents is to support that healthy lifestyle, one that engages their minds and bodies. When our residents think about squaring the curve, they think about enjoying their later years with a healthy life and enjoying a high quality lifestyle right up until the end. For 24 years, Belmont Village has owned and operated best in class, fully licensed senior living communities. And we're founded on the belief that all seniors deserve to live happy, self-directed lives, but in a supportive community. And it's one that's filled with new friendships and interests, safety and security, quality and value. We focus on bringing people together while providing them with the very best quality of life. Our communities offer independent, assisted, and memory care support. And although our residents' needs may vary, everyone can count on our caring and compassionate staff who are committed to providing this high quality, person-centered care. And our residents and their families have peace of mind because they know that our Belmont nurses are trained medical professionals who are on site 24 hours a day. And especially for those experiencing cognitive impairment and early stage memory loss, Belmont pioneered a comprehensive therapeutic program, one that's based on leading research and ongoing evaluation. It combines our whole brain fitness lifestyle with our wellness model and mental fitness. It's proven to have a profound impact on addressing the needs and abilities of residents with early stage memory loss so that they too can stay involved, build their confidence, and have happy, fulfilling days. But successful aging also involves staying active, and it's critical for cardiovascular health. Whether our residents want to kickstart their day with group fitness or one-on-one exercise, our goal is always to help stimulate both their minds and bodies, but at whatever level they feel successful. And what better way to physically engage our residents than under the watchful eyes of our team of licensed physical therapists. At Belmont Village, it's all about quality of life. It's about health, energy, and purpose. We want all of our residents to stay healthy and active, to square the curve, and in so doing, to live well. If you would like more information about Belmont Village, or you want to learn what makes our community so unique, I hope that you'll give me a call or send me a text or email. My phone number is 424-232-0701, and my email is sberger@belmontvillage.com. Choosing a senior living community is one of the most important life decisions. Please take the time to compare and don't wait for a crisis to react. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you at our next event. Kirsta, back to you.
Thank you, Sue. We appreciate you. I know we were not able to address all the questions today, so please do feel free to email me at the invitation or the address on your invitation, and I would be happy to pass along your questions to Phil. He did say that he would take more questions if we had some more, so feel free to email me at the email address that is on your invitation, and I would be happy to pass those along to you. That concludes our meeting today. We're so thankful for all of you who joined us. And thank you. And if you want to be on our mailing list for Belmont Village, please do email Susan Berger, or again, you can email me, Kirsty Julia, and we'd be happy to add you to our mailing list. Thank you again for your time today, and I hope that you all have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.